Set to go. Good evening. What if someone's got that recorded? Good evening and welcome to the June 12th, 2019 Council Committee of the Whole meeting. Held at 7, well, we're a little bit late and I apologize for starting a bit late, but we've, as a council, we've been meeting since 5 today, so we had to take a quick break before we restarted. So at this time, I'd like to confirm the agenda. Are there any emergent items from any of the councillors tonight?
Yes, Your Worship. I would like to put an item on under 7.0 for urgent business to do with, I need to be put on the Wheatland Housing Board as a alternate.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do you have that, Jen, to Wheatland Housing Board? Are there any other emergent items? Anything from administration? Okay, so I'm looking for a motion. Thank you, Councillor Corbeil.
I move confirmation of the agenda as amended.
Thank you. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? And the motion is carried. Which brings us to item 3, delegations. And just before I call the first delegation up, if you're presenting as a delegation tonight, just a reminder, you have 10 minutes to present, and then following that 10-minute period, there will be questions and or discussion from the councillors. So at this time, I'd like to call forward Strathmore High School to discuss and present on the Net Zero project. And if you wouldn't mind stepping forward to the podium and introducing yourselves, and then you can start your presentation. Thank you. Good evening.
Okay, good evening, Council. So my name is Mr. Schweitzer, Mark Schweitzer. I'm a teacher at the high school, and this is Leston Lobo. So we are here today to kind of introduce a project that we are kind of undertaking. It's kind of an ambitious project here in Strathmore High School. And it's a project-based learning initiative that we're trying, where students are kind of learning on the job. So Leston, do you want to just maybe introduce a little bit of the project, maybe just for a few minutes, and then we can kind of talk back and forth?
I'll be glad to.
Okay.
So our team, under the guidance of Mr. Mark Schweitzer, had been working together during the past few months to find effective ways in which we can convert our school into the first net zero school in Alberta, meaning that the amount of energy used in our school on an annual basis must be roughly equal to the renewable energy produced on the site. Firstly, we have applied for a $5,000 grant, which we have successfully won, and in the next few weeks, we plan to apply for another grant, in which we hope to win $1 million that we will utilize to buy and install solar panels in particular areas within our school premises, based on the results we have obtained from the heat ray, which is a device that calculates the amount of heat that is trapped in particular areas from the school to infrared images. We have found that while the glasses in the window do not absorb a lot of heat, the window panes trap in a lot of heat, which we can utilize to produce energy in particular areas and classes in our school. Our group has also collaborated with Mr. Godo and his team, who is the founder of a company named Carbon Busters in Edmonton. We have been able to gain a lot of insight through his presentation about climate change, renewable sources of energy, and analyzing utilities. He and his team has helped us to do energy audits within our school, as well as calculated the amount of heat and light energy used in the ice hockey arena. Part of our plan was to transfer some of the heat energy used in the arena into our school to produce more energy. He and his team has also provided us with devices such as the heat ray, lux meter, and water meter, and other devices that can be used to calculate the amount of heat and energy each class in particular areas like the gym and the theater are consuming. These devices has helped us a lot through these energy audits and gave us some accurate results that will help us to make some right decisions about what measures should be taken in the next few months. Well, some of our members have also audited the school electric... Sure. Sorry. Okay, so some of our members have also audited the school's electric bills and are currently in the process of auditing the gas bills. We have already spread the news of our program within our school and have recently given them an update of our current status. We have also planned to spread awareness about our project once we install the solar panels after we win the $1 million grant, through the newspaper and radio station, informing them about our achievements and ways that one can conserve energy effectively, and why it is important for every school to be net zero, because a small step can lead us to greater things. And once successful, we will try to spread energy conservation measures to receive cooperation and support from the civilians to make this town into a net zero town as well. Together, we can make this place better to live with and with no pollution and no threat and just conserve energy.
Okay, thanks. Okay, thanks, Leston, for that. That's a lot of information there. And if you guys don't mind, I'm just going to do just a quick little recap of what we're doing with that, with all the information that Leston just gave you. And so the initiative started with, over the holidays, I applied for and won a $113,000 grant from the Alberta government to start an initiative to do the initial engineering kind of background into what it'll take to do this. And so we'll effectively be the first school in Canada actually to be the first net zero energy school, which would mean producing as much energy as you consume, including heat and electricity. And it's a pretty big thing. If we're able to pull it off, it's big news. It's going to be making media attention across the country. We're the first in Alberta. There's one brand new school built in Quebec that was built about a month and a half ago that is starting to meet that standard, but that's built from scratch. So it's a pretty big deal. I used to work at Stantec. It's an engineering firm in Calgary, and so we have them involved too, where they're starting off with a mentorship program with us. And so we're starting to get a lot of support from that. Like Leston just said, we just won another grant. And we've already had some engineers from Edmonton come down, taking a look at our school and what it would take to actually do this. And so why we're here today is to introduce this project to you as something that's going to basically be making the media waves soon. So just to kind of give you a heads up, it's a pretty big deal. And to pull it off, though, we're going to need as much political and financial support as we can. Initial estimates could be upwards of a few $1 million if we wanted to achieve this goal. We're already partway there, and we're talking to some companies already to help us out with it. But as far as the heating concern goes, so our utility bills are about $230,000 per year for our school. 200 to 230 seems to be the average for the last 5 years, and so it's substantial. Even if you look at if you're to make a loan payment on a few $1 million, if you make that your loan payment per year, you can start to think that, oh yeah, this is definitely achievable. So it started to get us thinking about, well, if we can pull this off and make it feasible, then why can't we start to do it in other buildings across the school division and even in other public buildings, in other town buildings? If we want to maybe even, you can even think about looking at our town. We have our new solar development possibly going through, almost rebranding the town as, being one of the greenest towns in Alberta. It is something else. So our coming here today is our school is part of our building facility is attached to the pool and the Egg Society and some other public space, and we're very, very close, within 100 meters of the arena. And one thing to achieve our net zero as far as heating goes is all that waste heat in the winter. I don't know if you guys realize, but to cool ice, even though it's like minus 40 outside, it takes a lot of energy, a lot of heat, and that's just pumped out to the atmosphere. And so what this one engineering firm looked at, they're like, well, what we started to do in Europe and some other places is actually harnessing that heat to then heat any kind of surrounding buildings in the surrounding town, and especially our school. And so the heat that comes off of just that rink alone to cool that ice is enough to heat their whole school, kind of thing like that. So money that's just being wasted, why can't we kind of pull some of that? And we're talking about tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars that start to build up over a short period of time. If we're looking at $200,000 a year just on heating and electricity. So part of the funding would be that we're looking at to getting, and whether it's legislative approvals for doing any kind of engineering to pump that heat over to our school, it would be another conversation we'd have. As far as photovoltaics, so solar panels on the roof, that's the other part of the cost that we're talking about. The other $1 million or $2 million that's going to take to do that, and that's fine. We know how to do that engineering part of it. It just takes the financial capital for that. And Leston just alluded to that. We are applying to some more grants. There's one grant through the Alberta government that will provide up to 50% of the costs of any kind of photovoltaic installation costs. And so whether it's going to cost us $2 million or $3 million or $1.5 million for the photovoltaics, they'll cover half of that. And that's the figure that he was throwing out. I'm pretty good with doing budgets and doing proposals and grant writing, which is part of our team now too. The students are actually learning how to apply for grants. And the last one that they wrote from scratch themselves, there's about 8 of them, they won themselves as $5,000. And so we're starting to build up some skills. Okay, I know we're kind of running short on time here. I want to just kind of close with, we're trying to build up some skills with our students where it's not just class-based learning, but I'm trying to prepare them for real life jobs. And I'm trying to create jobs in Strathmore too, thinking on the lines of even whether it's going to be solar installation or project management teams. And so I've broken this team into management leaders, basically. So I'm trying to produce leaders, have students come to council meetings and to other public events too. So any type of support or questions you want to fire back to me, we're just looking for what kind of input or support could you guys help us out with this, because I'm gonna make it happen either way. I got some people that are gonna help me out with this. It's been a lot of work on my end, but if you guys can help me out in any way, us out in any way, our school, our town, this could be magical. It could be a pretty good thing. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And are there questions or comments from council? Deputy Mayor Montgomery.
Thank you, Your Worship. And thank you very much for the presentation, and thank you for, I guess, like giving your students some real world experience and kind of pursuing this. I guess my question is, so currently we pay a requisition to fund the schools. So if we were to say, like, loan the money, I guess how would that money come back to us? Because I don't understand. I'll be honest, I don't understand kind of the funding structure right now. I'm assuming that requisition pays for the energy that's used at the school currently. So would we be able to reduce our requisition by a certain amount, or does that stay static?
That's the government.
Yeah, and so that's what I'm wondering. How would we recover? Like, let's say we did save $200,000 a year. How does that come back to us?
Yeah, good question too. One of the things too that I would look at too as an initial thought would be even approval processes for recovering heat energy just lost already from the arena, for example. So that's going to be half of our bill, half of the $200,000 that's just coming from heating. So part of it would be that's money being spent already to heat the arena. What would be one way you guys could help facilitate the engineering process with pulling over that heat, even as far as approval processes for bringing over the heat? And so that would be not money spent by the town, but just just thinking through the initial stages of it once we go through the initial engineering planning of it. As far as funding goes, that's a good question too. I'm not too sure how the requisition works or what we'd have to look at with that. That would have to be next stages, but good question.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Montgomery. Councillor. Oh, sorry, Ryan.
Thank you, Your Worship. I won't interrupt council, but this may be when my group can support, or infrastructure ops and development services can support the school on. We're actually working on some other initiatives now very similar to this as well. We've completed some building assessments that we can make available in terms of looking at cogen opportunities. So what I think I'll do is I'll put this team in touch with David in my department, who's spearheading a number of these initiatives, and we can start looking for some synergies. I think there may be more than we're expecting, both in terms of the cogeneration, the sharing waste heat, and then even looking at deployment of solar panels. So, following up from this, I'll put you guys in touch with David from my team and see what we can do with it.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Councillor Sobel.
Thank you, Your Worship. So, I guess the goal I had in inviting you to come tonight and give a presentation was to get that statement on record. So I really appreciate that, Ryan, and that's all I could hope for was I felt the need. I was fortunate enough to be invited to one of the meetings a few weeks ago at your school when this was discussed, and I was actually a little shocked at who was at the table. There's so much support for this idea and for Mark himself and for the students. I mean, this is all good stuff. So it's got a great goal, and there's lots of stuff to learn. And as a bonus now, with what Ryan just said, I'm satisfied that the town is going to become somewhat of a partner and assist you in this goal. So, and of course, I'm looking at that swimming pool in the corner there, and I'm thinking, boy, maybe there's something we can do with that, because that costs us lots of dollars. So thank you very much, and all the students, congratulations. You guys are doing a wonderful job. I appreciate you coming tonight. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. Councillor Corbeil.
Thank you, Your Worship. I thank you very much for coming. I love the forward thinking that you are guiding these students in this direction. And not only are they learning these future, I guess, goals that I think more buildings should have, they're actually also learning like the grant writing. Like it's a great advantage, great skill, and I wish you guys the best of luck. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Corbeil. Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to say thank you, Mark, for coming today and for bringing such a courageous young speaker as yourself. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed your presentation. I think that you had so much in there. I would love to even get a copy of what you said, so I can just kind of break it down a little bit more for myself. Yeah. Oh, no. Mr. Schweitzer can forward it to me, for sure. But I thank you for seeing the opportunity with a building that is so close and which we're already putting public dollars in and supporting, and seeing an opportunity. And I hope that this really, I'm so glad that Mr. Roycroft really stepped up and said that we're going to look for synergies, because that's what we need to do. And we need to look at that for our new town hall too. And just any new build with Strathmore, this is the way that we need to go into the future. And so I really support this. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. Mark,
Yeah.
Just a quick question for me. You said you had engineers come out already to look over the
Yeah.
facilities. Did they have any recommendations as far as that street area that the high school shares with the town, as far as potential energy savings? Is there any redesign or any things that they would suggest?
Well, they had a few suggestions, and one reason why we are here today is they said, well, first of all, we share that common air, and so when we're heating in a way where, even though the bills are split, with a certain ratio out towards the end of the building there, we do have the common heat exchange, and so whatever we do with net zero, because we involve heat energy too, we have to involve the town, and so that's part of this discussion. As far as changing the street area itself, we didn't get into any of those conversations where it's more of, he asked, is there a hockey rink somewhere in town? Because what we've been doing in Germany. So this is a company out of Edmonton who's building Edmonton's first net zero community of 400 and some homes. They're building the municipal airport area, redesigning, and they're building a new development right outside city limits. So they're kind of been at the forefront of building net zero homes in Alberta. That's why we got them. And also the engineers who were out from Stantec, and so they had two senior managers out there who manage floors of about 1,000 or 2,000 people, and so we had some pretty big people buying into this program as far as putting their weight behind it. And so if when we are designing stuff, if there are any conversations that we need to have with those two organizations, there's a lot of expertise there too that want to see this succeed. It's good public relations and good news stories for them is what they're looking at. As far as also, we are paying them some money too, so that's part of the grant. But anyways, as far as the street area goes, we didn't actually look at the street itself. We looked at the roof though too, and looking at for support mechanisms and stuff like that. We also looked at proximity to the arena, and then even any type of geo exchange that if we aren't going to do anything with the arena, what can we do for underground heating if we were to start to drill pipes down, if possible, and to do a geo exchange just from getting heat from the soil itself. You'd have to go down about 30 feet maybe, but that would be another approval process. That's for another day.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much for the information and the presentation, and we'll leave it to Councillor Bauer.
Yes, I just was thinking of something that you said to me last week, and you said that you did an internal audit within the school so that you could start bringing down your costs, and that $230,000 that you're spending every year, bring that down to a more manageable number. Can you talk about the things that you're actually doing in order to get there?
Oh yeah, and so that's actually a very good conversation for any of our public buildings. We can start to do that to save money, not only in our school, but whatever buildings that we're operating, because it's taxpayer money, right? And so what we did is we looked at what's the proper reading level, and if you have too much light, you actually get more tired throughout the day, and you start getting develop headaches, or even you can't pay attention, basically. And so we looked at research into proper lighting level, which is around 350 lux, 250 to 350. My classroom was at 1,100. Yeah,
Just by removing.
yeah. So we're just removing our light bulbs, and we brought it down to about 400 lux, and asked the students after a couple of weeks, did you notice a difference? And they all looked around, they're like, oh, we didn't realize you guys did anything. So right there, this is like an innovative group that we are that we have at our school now, trying to promote forward thinking. So there's a lot of easy, cost-effective things that we're going to do first, is so reduce in ways like that. So if we can reduce our electricity consumption by upwards of a half, even without affecting our daily life, that alone will cost. So what that does is saves us on cost of how many photovoltaics do we even need to put up. Yeah, so reduce first, and then, yeah, for sure. Thanks.
If you would pass those on to me or to our team, I would appreciate it, and maybe we can start doing some of those things in our town
Exactly.
Offices as well.
And if you wouldn't mind, to help our students experience out too, to have them help come out and do the audits too.
They could come out and do the audit. That would be even better.
Exactly.
Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. Councillor Peterson?
I was just
You're
going
good?
to ask if they could come and do the audit.
Well, that's my hope. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for your presentation and for answering the questions, and we'll leave it with you and Ryan to get your teams together as far as consultations.
Okay. Thank you very
And
much.
thanks again.
Yeah. Thanks.
This brings us to item 3.2, micro home presentation, and we have Alexandra and Thomas Hansen, who are, Alexandra, welcome tonight.
Good evening, Your Worship and councillors. Today we have Thomas Grenier from Vagabond Tiny Homes presenting to you the concept of tiny homes and what he's done so far, and what would be possible here in Strathmore as well.
Good evening, Thomas, and welcome.
Thank you. Council, Your Worship, Administration. The micro home one? I don't see. Was it submitted? Yeah, it was. It's okay, we can go without it. Perhaps while this is happening, there it is. Okay. Just make sure you speak up. Okay, let's try this again. Thank you. My name is Thomas Grenier. I represent Vagabond Tiny Homes. First and foremost, thank you very much for taking the time to hear a very broad, high-level kind of perspective of what we're going with tonight. So what I'm approaching you with today is the concept of micro homes being integrated into a municipal fabric.
It's quite interesting to a lot of people. I had the I had the opportunity to have a face-to-face sit-down chat with Mayor Robertson from Okotoks. So he was able to fill me in on a lot of things as far as their approach to this. One of the things he did suggest was he felt it was better to have a tiny home area integrated into another subdivision as opposed to creating a completely separate one. He felt that has been a bit of a problem, and not to throw any negative impact on any of this. He did say that they have withstood quite a backlash as a council from a lot of people, and there is a group that is just forming now to come at them again. So there are some controversies related to this, but we'll talk more about that another time. Councillor Sobel.
Thank you, Your Worship. We would certainly not be used to any controversy, would we? Thank you very much for that. That was it was actually very extremely interesting.
Thank you.
And I do have a couple of questions for you. I guess I'll start with the Okotoks project is nonprofit, and I'm a little confused as how that works. Is this a condo board type of setup that's nonprofit?
Somewhat. So it's been a very complicated road to get to that point.
Sounds like it would be.
Originally, it was my for-profit company that had been the one approaching Okotoks and the CMHC as the primary funder for this. Over the course of time, as a means to really kind of work against some of the negative feedback that we've gotten, and within our own mandate already, I elected to form a nonprofit to really kind of solidify my intent to do this as a goodwill project, something that would do something beyond a monetary value, if that makes sense. By setting up as a nonprofit, or let me rephrase, the CMHC has kind of come in as an investor because this is one of the more innovative projects in Canada, and they want to test this as a model for other municipalities to follow suit. With that in mind, we weren't able to form a housing association because the CMHC would like to maintain a degree of control, as this is the prototype, if you will, to be held within a board of governance within a nonprofit rather than a community association outright. So we'll have a nonprofit manage the community in terms of the general maintenance, and a community association that it works with it, comprised of its own residents. And this was a way to kind of balance keeping the direction that I had made a commitment to the CMHC with and the town of Okotoks without it being swayed over time by residents, but also giving as much autonomy to the residents as possible. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you. And my next question is in regards to, and I don't necessarily want to get into any detail in regards to Lakewood, but is the concept focused on nonprofit in that project as well?
It doesn't necessarily have to be.
Okay.
I'm fairly open to, again, kind of flexing to the needs of the municipality, but my intent here is not to just build a community and move on, but to really give the community back to its residents.
Great. And at the risk of going over my allotment of questions, I'll ask the $1 million one, which is roundhouse price. What does it cost to get into one of these 400 square foot places in Okotoks? And I'm talking rough.
For purchase or for rental?
For purchase.
We're working with a range of $85,000 to $130,000 for the purchase of a home. And that would depend on the size and whatever kind of aesthetics.
Thank you very much.
No worries.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. Councillor Corbio.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for the, I would say enlightened presentation. It was really interesting. I can see there would be a need here for something like this. A few questions that I had. You had mentioned that there was going to be cars available for its residents and stuff like that. We don't have to really get into it, but how would fairness play in? I think that would be a huge issue.
Car to go. Same thing.
Yeah.
First come, first. Car to go.
That's a great question. That's something we really need to work on in terms of ensuring that there isn't a single or a collection of people who are taking
Hoarding?
all of yes, all of the car time. And specifically with Okotoks, it's adjacent to a future development of like a grocery store, a pharmacy, a collection of things that they would typically need within walking distance. So the 2 electric cars would be purchased by the nonprofit. And there would have to be a system that would allow for people to access it freely, but also have, I'm not sure if that would be a reservation in the
Yeah.
future system or just showing up system, but that's something that we would work with the town of Okotoks on.
It's all good. I do like the direction. I do like some of the ideas and the concepts around this, and thank you very much for coming.
No worries, thank you.
Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Do you have any difficulty or pushback from banks in terms of, saying that tiny houses draw down on value, on home values, and bring down community values? I know that 2012, when I was first looking into the whole concept, that was a big issue. The banks actually were doing assessments based on tiny homes and communities, and were doing major pushback in terms of valuation. Do you have any experience in that, of what's happened in Okotoks? Has there been any pushback on that side?
Not as of yet. So with Okotoks, this would be a premier village of its type. So we really are shooting with a degree of ambiguity here. But what we had to do specifically with Okotoks is make the space attractive financially to the adjacent community. So that would mean for the tiny homes having a fairly extensive green barrier between the adjacent community and the tiny homes, so that their roofs may be seen, but the homes are not kind of smushed up against the single detached homes that are there. And by creating a green space on the back edge of all of the houses, or the typical houses that back onto it, we actually increased their value, I think, somewhere between $40,000 and $60,000, because now they're backing onto a park.
Right.
So it would be working with, specifically, trying to make sure that the broader development is enhanced by their presence there as well.
And it's a contained development too, so it kind of eliminates that.
Yeah.
But the information that I got from that 2012 report, again, when I went back and looked, it was out of New York State. So now they're starting to sell those homes, or, people are moving in again, and especially elderly people moving out of them now and selling them, and the valuations actually went up. So it kind of undid the original banking assessment, so it was kind of a good news story. And those were ones that were integrated communities. The other question I had was, I know that many communities have directives around square footage and minimum square footages, and then building codes become a big issue. Was that a major stumbling block at all with you, or was it mitigated because of the process that you went through?
It was a bit of both. So it's still a process that's ongoing, in that we have to, in the case of Okotoks, we have to reconsider their own bylaws and zoning, because up until now, Okotoks has been the premier single detached housing development on Calgary. So they have to rewrite a whole new designation.
That makes me want to bang my head when I think about doing that, about the work that would take.
I think it was part of the reason why this has taken so long to get off the ground.
Yeah, that's I thought about that. And then the final question I had, so because you've run this as a nonprofit, then you're not going to run into that situation where investors will come in and buy up for rental properties and create a projects environment. That can't happen under this process that you've developed.
No, it can't.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Deputy Mayor Montgomery.
Thank you, Worship. And thank you very much for your presentation. It was certainly informative. One of my questions is, are these on lots that are owned or leased? So like the person just owned the house, or do they own the land under it?
With the Okotoks project, the town maintains ownership of their land on the long term.
Okay.
So they would own the houses and have a lease for 50 to 75 years on the site. These units are movable, although not explicitly made for that to happen very often. Sorry?
They're not on wheels?
No, they're not. My hope is with microhomes that tiny houses on wheels can start to make an introduction. I felt this would be a nice middle step, but with Okotoks, as it is, they can't legally sell it, and we had to lease it from them, and the purchasing power of the home does go down because they don't have the lot underneath it. But as it's a long-term lease, people seem to be quite receptive to it. With the case of Strathmore, hypothetically, my impression of the whole thing would be to subdivide each one of these into micro lots would be almost cost prohibitive, whilst also providing affordable housing. I think incorporating it as a nonprofit or a housing association might be strengthening for the long term, specifically for micro homes, especially in a more shared context where a good portion of the land is explicitly for the extension of living space. If that answers your question.
It does, thank you. And you actually answered a couple of my other questions, but how much, let's say in Okotoks, how much are the monthly fees that somebody would be expected to pay for the community fee?
We projected the pad rental for the purchased homes to be in the neighborhood of $480 to $500. That would include all utilities, community garden plot, weekly produce from the community garden, and all services through the central building. The rental portion would range from $780 to $1,250, depending on income level, size of unit, and a bracket that they would fall into.
Okay. And would, let's say, okay. I was going to ask a question, but I won't. Are these constructed on site or are they prefab?
In the case of Okotoks, they've been projected to be built off-site and moved on-site. It is slightly more efficient to do that on-site, but it really depends on the timeline and the scope of work that would need to be done in advance. They are small enough that they could be moved depending on the length from the manufacturing to its location. It does create, I think, a financial barrier, but in either case, both are workable, I think, in Strathmore's case.
Are they built and produced by your company?
Not at this point. Originally, that was, I think, my intention, but we'd be working with a third-party builder to execute the exact builds to our specification.
Okay. And how soon into the process would you expect common buildings to be provided?
In the case of Okotoks, they'll be built and open the moment people move in. My intent would be to have the same thing happen in any subsequent village. I think the community space building is essential.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for answering a lot of questions.
No worries.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Montgomery. Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you very much for your presentation. Not only did you answer a lot of my questions, but you also made the presentation that you sent to us come to life, and I appreciate that. I grew up in Edmonton, and in Edmonton, please don't hold that against me, we had community centers in every neighborhood. And I really love the way that you brought a community center as the focal point to your neighborhood, because that was something that helped communities compete against each other. We had friendly competitions, soccer games, and that kind of thing. And I would love to see that type of approach in the future, where we have places to meet and provide fellowship to each other, or just have a good party. And I was wondering about the solar panels, but maybe you've already answered this because you said that you weren't doing any basements. Did you consider geothermal at all?
I think geothermal, depending on the scale of the community, I think would be fairly dependent. In case of Okotoks, geothermal wasn't really on the board, but Okotoks, I think, had a strong push for solar panels. But in the case of approaching any other community, if geothermal is the more efficient way to go, then that would be something I would be certainly open to doing.
And are there tiny homes with basements currently being built?
Not that I'm aware of. There are individual tiny homes being constructed, I'm sure, with basements. On a scale that we're talking right now, not that I'm aware of. The enticing part of tiny or micro homes is that sometimes they can go onto pieces of land which would be kind of prohibitive for basement structure, either for cost or its location to a floodplain or something like that. So typically, because we want to maintain affordability, we do above ground more often than not.
Good. And then the only other thing I thought of while I was looking at this was a lot of that 1/3 of seniors and whatnot, they do have motorhomes and recreational vehicles and things like that. So if people will people have a parking pad on their or next to their home where they can put their additional vehicles, or is that something that they would have to look at renting somewhere?
That's something that could be kind of interwoven with the municipality specifically. With Okotoks, each unit comes with a parking pad, and that parking pad also serves as the solar area, because the parking pad is covered and the entire roof of the entire parking structure is a solar cell. With larger things like RVs or trailers, that would be not really workable, I think, within the Okotoks model, particularly with the adjacent community forming around it. I think having a large collection of RVs or trailers would be, I think, a little bit prohibitive for us to do. Something like this could work, but my intent would be to have a parking spot for each one, but stress walkability as much as possible. So with Okotoks, we have all the cars parked on one side and the entire community is walkable thereafter. All the accessible units are the closest to the parking stalls as well as the central building. But within the case of Strathmore, something like that could be considered to have larger vehicles present, though I would hope that that would become something that detracts from the space overall.
Thank you. Thank you for coming to council today.
No worries, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brower. I just have one question, well, two questions, actually. This is, the area that we're looking at in Lakewood is the west side of the canal, where the duplex is in, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Second question is, it ties into something Deputy Mayor Montgomery had said, and that is, as far as a Strathmore product and a Strathmore concept, how would a tiny home area in Lakewood Meadows work, since the developers own that property versus the town-owned land in Okotoks? Would the developers then in Lakewood be the leaseholder as far as that condo-style approach?
For this piece of land specifically, I think it would be a land purchase.
Okay. But you had said something that lot sizes could be prohibitive as far as financially making it viable. Is that not an issue? You were talking about 100 homes, possibly?
In the neighborhood of, yes.
Okay, so they would actually purchase and own the homes then?
They would purchase and own the homes, I think, at least preliminarily at this point.
Okay.
We were thinking of having the nonprofit purchase the land.
Okay. So completely different than Okotoks'
Yeah,
situation?
It's
Okay.
a different situation. It is a little bit easier because that would give a little bit more freedom and I think autonomy to that community.
Yeah.
Rather with Okotoks, we have to comply with a lot of different stresses on the situation. But the 100 homes within that piece of land ideally would be part rental, part purchase. Multiple tiered would be my preference. And they would own the homes, and together the nonprofit would own the land.
Okay, thank you. And then your next steps would be to discuss with our administration or our staff as far as where to go next, Ryan? Are you thinking in terms of an open house to gauge public interest?
I think that would be, a logical next step. That with combined with really giving some preliminary feedback, so getting a sense of what would be valuable as part of the administration or the council's intention with something like this, and taking some of that feedback and incorporating it into some broad visual renderings that would kind of help paint the picture. At that point, I think a community engagement process would be essential, and just really kind of put a pulse onto what the citizens of Strathmore would want or could want out of a community like this, and what typical criticisms or praises we get for the process, and trying to work with those as best as possible.
Okay, thank you very much. That answers a lot of my questions, and I know there's a definite segment of the population that's interested in this. It's an affordable way to get into home ownership, and it could be very exciting for our town. So we look to hear more from you and how things are going then.
Okay.
Thanks for your
so much.
presentation.
I appreciate it, and thank you for the extra time. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we're on to item 4, confirmation of minutes, and 4.1, the approval of the Committee of the Whole meeting minutes for May 8th, 2019. Councillor Brower.
I move that council adopt the May 8th, 2019 Committee of the Whole meeting minutes as presented.
Thank you very much. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? Motion is carried. And I'm looking for a motion to go into Committee of the Whole. Councillor Corbeil.
I move we go into Committee of the Whole.
Thank you very much. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? And we're going into Committee of the Whole. And I believe we don't have unfinished business? Pardon me?
Your Worship, administration is wondering if we could have a quick recess.
Sure. Okay, we need a motion to go in recess. Thank you very much. So we're going in recess. We don't have to vote or discuss. Thank you. the whole portion of the public meeting for June 12th, and we have item 6.1, items from administration. It's the Strategic Administrative Services Quarterly Report. Welcome, Jen and Thomas.
Good evening, Your Worship, and member.
and just trying to include or increase
people strategy. The people strategy defines what capabilities we need, when and where we need them, and how our organization will use its workforce to deliver services to our citizens. So in other words, people make strategy happen. Okay? So that's the list of the upcoming projects. Thank you.
So next we're going to talk about ledge services. I know it's super riveting, so we'll try not to excite you too much. Ledge Services is made up of a team of 4 individuals. Ledge Services clerk Deborah, who is our main reception, organization administrative support, our council administrative support, as well as our cemetery coordinator. We also have Lisa Brown, who is our Ledge officer. Lisa is responsible for council committee support, as well as assessment review board, SDAB support, and meeting management solutions administrator. And also tonight we don't have with us Debbie. She owes us donuts in the morning. But Debbie is our records analyst. She's responsible for implementing all of our records management systems, policy development, retention, and archive management. So since Debbie's not here tonight, I'll give you a quick update on records. So our records management software was deployed over this past year to 82 staff. The software enhances the town's performance by providing an end-to-end and secure, reliable records management program through electronic and physical records solutions. The department has trained so far this year 20 staff and contractors. We provide training support to all 82 users, and that is done throughout the year on a consistent basis. To date, we have converted 13,126 documents to electronic documents, which is no small task. This will be the 3rd year we are organizing a company-wide cleanup day, which is June 21st. This year we're focusing on electronic records cleanup. We focused on paper records, and that kind of shows kind of our progression where we've moved from those paper records into electronic records now. So I'm very proud of Debbie and all that she's done there. And just another interesting note, last year we saved 56.42 trees from destruction, and we've done that through our participation in our shredding and recycling program. We maintain 3 record solutions for the town, including Records Vault, secondary storage for boxes, and we also hold an Iron Mountain account. We're currently working on a records ticketing system for items like M-Files training, records requests, scanning requests, and M-Files change management.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'm going to talk about council committee appointments. So, council passed policy 1101, governments and appointment of policies and committees in 2018. This policy instructs legislative services to develop a recruitment campaign for council committee members. We are currently working on this campaign and it will be launched in August of 2018.
Your Worship, Council, thank you for having us this evening. As legislative services, we always continue to work on our corporate and council procedures to ensure that efficiency and compliance. We deployed our eScribe meeting management system in early 2019. Currently, there are 66 users on the software product to submit and review and approve reports to council. eScribe is also being used to draft council minutes. The final step in the implementation of this software is onboarding council. Excited? This will allow council to view your agendas electronically without having to scroll through an entire package. Council can also draft resolutions using the software and submit to the recording secretary during council meetings. And finally, council will be able to vote with a touch of a button.
Recently, the Legislative Services Department has implemented a new cemetery management program called Stone Orchard. We've been busy with the management of this. Since January of 2018, we have sold 32 plots and had 34 burials, including reserve plots that we've had already in the cemetery. We've also deployed the new software system. Stone Orchard is allowing us to keep more detailed information and enhances our capabilities to report on cemetery information for our customers.
And finally, we have started our review of bylaws and policies. We are currently doing our initial review to identify duplication, deficiencies, and accuracy within the documents. Our next steps will include reviewing the content of each bylaw to ensure the accuracy, compliance with other legislation and relevancy. This is a big project which will occur over multiple quarters. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then lastly, just a quick look at some upcoming projects for Ledge Services. As council knows, we are working on a cemetery master plan. That plan should be coming to council at the end of September for review. We're also going to be introducing some political acuity workshops that have been developed by the CAMA Association, and we'll be holding those workshops for both council and staff, so look forward to some dates coming up for that. As Lisa mentioned, we've started our bylaw and policy comprehensive review. eScribe deployment, as also mentioned. We're also working on a citizen recognition program, as we discussed at council's retreat earlier this year, and we're looking to bring that program forward to council in fall of 2019. We continue to work with M-Files, and we're constructing workflows to help improve organizational process. And we're also creating a delegation application form that will also have guidelines for delegations for coming to council that should hopefully be very useful. And next up, we have communications. I'm sorry, I guess that's me. I have to introduce them. So, council, we have our communications team is made up of 1.5 members, and that's not because Carla's short. I told her I was going to tell a joke. So Carla is our comms specialist. Carla works very hard on communications plans and strategies on our communications content and development of our publications, as well as website management, and she also serves as our public information officer for emergency management. Ty Tamasta is our communications ambassador. Ty is a very busy person as well, dealing with our social media management, as well as our website, corporate communications content. Ty is an excellent customer service rep for our town, and he's also media relations. So they're going to give you an update on their accomplishments.
So, as a fairly new department, we've been very busy over the last year. We have accomplished a lot. I'll just run through a few highlights for us. Mayor Minute videos, which have been well received by the community, and look out, Hollywood's calling. And we've also completed crisis communication training alongside emergency management.
So as it currently stands, the town of Strathmore has just nearly under 5,000 likes on our Facebook page alone. We have nearly 2,000 likes on Twitter, and on Instagram we're currently sitting at approximately 1,200. On average, per day on the Strathmore Facebook page alone, the average post will reach approximately 4,000 people. In addition to that, we've also developed and are developing weekly, in collaboration with infrastructure, the capital project report, which is released weekly, like I mentioned. And then in addition to that, of course, we do support two external community groups like Communities in Bloom.
So then we'll give you just a quick little tiny taste of our upcoming projects, just to tantalize your taste buds. We have some very exciting things coming up. One I know you've been waiting for is we are getting a new website. So it's coming, it's in the works right now. Alongside IT, we have contracted eSolutions to develop this website. It has improved accessibility and functionality. eSolutions is a reputable provider who has also developed websites for the City of Toronto and many municipalities across Alberta. So you'll be able to view that June 24th, and we look forward to your feedback. Some exciting features will include accessibility for people with screen readers. Our previous website didn't have this option, so that's really going to help. We also allow for microsites, as economic development is working on one right now. And we have an improved community calendar, which will allow citizens to actually submit community events. And people can subscribe to the calendar, so if an event is canceled or changed, they will also receive an email notification. We have the ability for online forms, as well as integration with our existing programs, such as eScribe. And it's really going to allow us room to grow with our organization. So we're really looking forward to it.
So right now with our current website transitioning over to our new website, our main focus has been updating and fixing any incorrect broken links that may be outdated or may be incorrect for whatever reason. Our new website has built-in tools that allow us to run audits on what will be our new website. So we'll see what content is outdated, what website links may need to be updated, what content may need to be looked at again. So we'll be running those every 3 to 6 months, and we'll be able to pinpoint exactly, hopefully, where these issues will be on our website.
And continuing with our goals and growth in the organization, we have in-house developed a communication strategic plan, which reflects Council's priorities. We will present this plan in the next quarter to Council. We are also supporting the department and organizational growth with continuous development of policies and procedures to streamline our internal and external communication functions. An example of this is our ticket system that we use in-house to track and prioritize internal communications requests.
And finally, we're developing a citizen engagement plan which will highlight goals for the remainder of 2019 all the way through 2021. And we're continuing to expand on our reach and engaging residents through traditional mediums, including social media as well, and things like events and surveys.
That's exciting.
Thanks again for having us here today.
Thank you.
Next up, I'd like to introduce Alexandra Ross, who will provide an update on our economic development activities.
Good evening, Your Worship and councillors. I have I just have to see that here. Here we are. Economic development, I have the biggest team. I work pretty much with everyone in the organization, if you will, from recreation to planning, development, communications, everybody takes a part in economic development. It's very interlinked. As the accomplishments and the work that has been done since I've been hired, that was in February of this year, has been quite extensive. So we provided you with a handout with some, and it also is just the highlights on that handout. The top 3 accomplishments that I want to talk about right now is the number 1 is attracted in 2 new events to Strathmore. And that came about through an event that was facilitated by the province of Alberta in collaboration with Bow Valley College. And this event was for tourism operators. And I was introduced as the new economic development officer, and afterwards I was actually approached by quite a few individuals, and one of them was the new event that we actually attracted here to Strathmore, which is the medieval event from Brooks that's going to start in 2020, in August of 2020 for the first time at the Egg Society. So we're quite excited about that. The other event actually that came, we got a call about was a new agricultural event that is going to take place in May of 2020, and that will also take place in the egg grounds. Furthermore, the number 2 would be successful grant applications. I actually applied for 2 grants and was able to secure from Travel Alberta approximately $68,000 for a new tourism website, for an image and video library, for social media content, content writing, graphic design, and a new tourism website, which also will be a sort of a micro website as well. And last but not least, we initiated a business satisfaction survey. Thank you. And this is right now in progress, and we are approaching about 80 to 100 businesses, and we will have a report to council by September for that. So these are the top 3, I would say. Upcoming projects, really exciting, is our summer marketing campaign that was put together to actually attract some people, visitors from Calgary into Strathmore, in particular for our July event, Stick Around Downtown, and as well as our Stampede, but in general also visitors to visit our downtown and our beautiful town. So I gave you an example of that actually is fresh off the press. That's going to be in the back of the bus. I switched around a couple of things. I had 3 buses. They were actually mainly meant for tourism, but I decided to, because of the things that are happening in Calgary right now with their taxes and businesses leaving Calgary, we reacted fairly quick and did basically a guerrilla marketing type of campaign. Immediately reacted with switching one of the buses around, and this is what we'll see driving around for the next 2 months in Calgary, starting June 22nd for 2 months. And what we are working on upcoming projects here as well is the Economic Development micro website. We are in the midst of it already and will be launched in September. Very exciting for people that want to invest here, that want to open up a business here. It will be a one-stop shop. And of course, I'm the one-stop shop as well for new businesses, for new events, if any ideas of sorts. And last but not least, I'm working on a video and image library. And we contracted a videographer as well as a photographer, or we are in process of doing that. And that will take place over the summer months and also beyond the summer.
Thank you, Alexandra. And lastly, I would like to introduce our Special Projects Office. And with me today, or this evening, is Gloria Kuhn. Gloria is a resident of Strathmore, and she is the project manager on the new Strathmore Municipal building and also on the Kinsman Park Master Plan, both of which I'll be updating Council on later this evening. That's it.
Aye.
And that's it for our presentation this evening. Thank you.
Sorry, we're moving on to item 6.2, Recreation and Culture Quarterly Report for June. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, yeah, we have to drag it out. Because it's not a PowerPoint.
Yeah, sorry.
And where is it?
Sorry about that, Don.
Need to go to
Just gonna go right there. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks, Don.
Sorry, Mark. My apologies, we're just going over something in our calendar. My mistake. Congratulations. Congratulations for being here and getting on the agenda, and welcome tonight. We look forward to your presentation, and I look forward to stopping talking.
On that note, Your Worship and Council, thank you very much. This is our second quarterly report for Recreation and Culture. I'll be speaking about our facilities and then passing it over to Lauren and Erica to talk about some of the events that we have either had occurred or will be occurring as well. Excuse me. In terms of the aquatic center, you can see what things there. It's starting to ramp up. Swimming lessons are extremely popular with about 90% capacity, which is really outstanding considering the number of options and availability to our users. We provide a number of whether it's through the school, the public, private, or adult specialty courses. Our junior lifeguard club is exceeding expectations. We started that this year. We're at 20 participants, which is kind of our maximum number, and that seems like it's going very strong. The Whibbit, which is the I'm not sure how to describe it, but it's the giant inflatable. Thank you very much, Tracy. Is back into action, and it should be and is a part of our regular public swims each week. And then finally, this is kind of overall all the departments is the launch of our new recreation software, Perfect Mind. As so far has went it's very promising. We've had over 180 new accounts that were created in the first 3 days, meaning our communications team, who are all gone now, was very beneficial to have them and their expertise kind of spreading the message. We had very few customer complaints or questions about how the new process and signing up. And now we're having over, like I said, we're transitioning to majority of our registrations online as opposed to in person or over the phone. The Family Center, obviously this is kind of old information, but the ice has been removed since about Easter and has now been played host to lacrosse as well as the Redneck Rumble. The high school safe grad was held there at the end of May, and as council knows and supported, the Ag Society will be taking over the arena, both blue and gold, as a part of the Strathmore Stampede. Regular maintenance is continuing to go on in that building, as well as special projects including the elevator modernization and a new digital sign, which we kind of just got some more specific information about that today. And then the ice will be going back after the August long weekend, after the parade. The rodeo. In terms of the Civic Center, again, extremely popular. for the first quarter, we only had 8 days that did not include a booking of some capacity. So kudos to the staff there and the facility. And I think the renovations in terms of the flooring and the new chairs are really bringing more and more people into that facility. Obviously, we hosted a number of events and have a number outgoing. One of the features that we're going to be doing here in the next quarter is replacing the Civic Center doors with a couple sliders. That should be happening at the end of June. Help to obviously modernize the building, keep some of the wear and tear off those old doors, and we have the capability of hopefully retaining some of the heat that goes missing when they kind of get propped open and things like that. This kind of goes without saying because I was just here, I think, last week to talk about the sports center. But obviously the lacrosse boards and glass and protecting have all been installed, as are the 4 additional basketball hoops in the Magnum Cementing Gymnasium. Our permanent facility signage is already in place, and our sponsorship banner wraps, we're just waiting for the last of the supplier from that. Obviously the facility co-hosted the Redneck Rumble. So that's kind of what's happening there in terms of the facilities. We have a couple of capital projects that are ongoing right now. At the library, we have the secondary sidewalk removal. If you've been down there, that process has already started, I believe, on Monday or Tuesday, and that should be completed about probably in the next week or so, week and a half. The family center, the bus loading zone, that project was started on, I think, last Friday, where they started cutting out the concrete, and the concrete should be poured in place for this weekend. So we should be back up into operations for that facility early next week. So that's all in terms of the facilities. Lauren and Erica are going to speak to some of the events that we have going or have happened here in the last little bit.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. We are here tonight to talk about events and culture. The Pitching Community Cleanup Day was postponed due to weather, as you know, but people still came out to help clean up the community in the snow. The emergency preparedness event was successful with over 100 people in attendance. The event gave emergency service organizations the opportunity to highlight what they do. The first annual Equipment in the Park event was held on May 25th. The event was a great way for community members to tour the equipment that operations uses on a daily basis. We are assisting with various community-driven events this quarter as well, including the Get to Know Your Neighbor Festival and the Trismore. Our Let's Get Wrecked events were very successful this year with over 125 kids who participated in ball hockey and 35 participants in bocce ball. Last night was Walk with Council, which highlighted the new pathway signs in town. I'd like to thank Council for participating, and I will now turn the mic over to Erica, who is going to speak about Go Girl.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. So Go Girl is this Saturday, June 15th, and we're hosting it at the Strathmore Motor Product Sports Center. This is an initiative kind of focused on, encouraging active and healthy living within young girls. The age group that we're hosting this upcoming Saturday is between 11 to 14. MLA Leela here will also be making a short visit at lunchtime as she requested to be there. We have 8 girls registered so far, and the activities we have planned for the day are basketball, rugby, volleyball, as well as a nutrition lesson. We are also in the process of planning Canada Day, which is obviously on July 1st, and we are looking forward to seeing everyone there. And with that, if you have any questions, we'd like to answer them.
Any questions from Council? Council Corbeil?
Thank you, Your Worship. How many do you expect maybe for the Go Girl this weekend?
We have 8 girls registered, and registration's closed, but we are willing to take anyone who asks to register anyways.
Thank you.
And I'm coming out of coaching retirement.
For that?
So our capacity, capacity was 40.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Your Worship. So Erica, is there a way for us to reach out to the junior high at HCC and Crother, because and even the elementaries, to see if we can bring that up. Is cost, do you think, prohibitive for people, or do you think they just don't know about it?
So we've gone to almost every school and dropped off flyers multiple times. We also requested that they make announcements about Go Girl, as well as it's been posted on social media. I'm not too sure about cost. It is $20, and the Tim Hortons cookie campaign, as well as the United Way, are providing subsidies if necessary.
Wow.
That is being hosted through the Child, Youth, and Family Hub. So if subsidy is required, that's where we're directing them towards.
This is just such a great opportunity for people who haven't tried a sport or are not interested normally in athletics to be in a real safe environment to try something for the day. And I will try and push that on my social media. But I really hope that you can get your numbers up.
Thank you.
And I'll be coming out of retirement that morning to coach some volleyball at 11:15. So if you want to take part, let me know.
The sweatband will be busted out of the closet.
Yeah, the
again.
80s,
Yeah.
the 80s sports gear. Thank you very much. Thanks for your report and presentation and the insult. And our next presentation? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Cameron, welcome.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Fuel and members of council. The next item for council's consideration is item 6.3, Tree Protection Bylaw. So before I get into the meat of the presentation, I'd like to start with the recommendations. So staff is here this evening recommending that council direct development services to prepare a tree protection bylaw for council's consideration in September of this year. So the first slide I'd like to discuss are the benefits that trees provide in urban municipalities. There's no surprise here, but trees do provide many benefits to municipalities, and this isn't an exhaustive list by any means, but it's an overarching idea here. The research on trees suggests that trees provide significant mental health benefits to young developing children as well as aging adults. Also, stormwater attenuation plays a role with tree preservation. So the more trees there are in a neighborhood, the more likely it is that the trees can absorb water, and therefore it helps with retaining water on site. This was an interesting one to me, but trees also are proven to increase property values throughout neighborhoods, which is quite interesting. They also play a role in tourism. So if you look around the world, you see places like Central Park, they're full of trees, they draw people. So there's a big tourism component to these assets. And lastly would be air quality control. So trees do a really good job of bringing in carbon dioxide, spilling out oxygen, so it's really good for the environment. And so all this kind of leads to municipalities playing a role in protecting these assets, and one of the best ways we can do that is through the implementation of a tree protection bylaw. So at this point, we're wondering, what is a tree protection bylaw? And pretty simply, a tree protection bylaw is a bylaw that is adopted by council, implemented by administration, that allows a municipality to identify and preserve mature trees that are shown to have heritage value. They also allow municipalities to protect trees from poor handling techniques and land development activities. So you have a land development site and someone backs an excavator over a tree root. These bylaws allow those trees to be protected. A poor handling technique may be, someone is watering a tree with something other than water and that destroys the tree, or someone's drilling into a tree to, install a clothesline, something like that. Third point here is tree protection bylaws protect town land from unauthorized tree installation. These bylaws require, or allow municipalities rather, to require owners to remove diseased trees from properties that may pose a risk to healthy trees in the neighborhood. I'll speak to this point in a few slides, but this is a really important component of these bylaws. And last but not least, arguably another important component is that these bylaws allow municipalities to apply penalties to unauthorized removal or damage to a tree. Why does Strathmore need a tree protection bylaw? So to date, Development Services has made some good progress with protecting the environment. The first, which is the implementation of a public amenities disclosure form. So for all new development permit applications, we're requiring applicants to fill out this form, which pretty much asks applicants to identify trees or benches or sidewalks in the neighborhood, and then once those are identified, they have to discuss a plan to protect those features. So that's a good solid bit of progress we've made. And then second, we've also started to take 100% landscaping securities, which really makes developers accountable for protecting these assets. However, the town is falling short on having some sort of permit removal process right now. So if someone wants to remove a tree, there's really no consistent way we can enforce that or review that right now. It's just someone wants to take it down, and there's really nothing we have in place yet. And a tree protection bylaw will allow us to establish that process so it's consistent for everyone moving forward. Second, we also don't have an enforcement mechanism for penalties right now. So when someone fills out the tree amenity, the public amenity disclosure form, and they don't follow that, there's no real penalty that we can apply to them. So this will kind of give Development Services a bit of teeth when it comes to protecting the environment. And all this is leading to departments like the operations department. They have to send staff and resources and time to deal with these issues, and that's proving to be costly for those departments. So if we have a bylaw in place that kind of makes the owner accountable, it will, it does help the town in the end. The next two slides I have are a few examples around town here. So this was an example, an issue or discussion we had where a development permit was approved and there was a tree shown on the site, on the approved plan, and that tree disappeared. And we didn't really have a mechanism, like I've mentioned, to require replacement or any sort of thing like that. Development Services did work with the landowner, and we came to a conclusion in the end. But if we had have had a tree protection bylaw in place, it would have made that more clear and easier for the applicant to understand and for the town to implement. And the second example I'm showing here was provided by the town's horticulturalist, Donna. She took these images in town, and I'll direct you to the image on the left. The image on the left is a diseased shrub, and right now we don't have a mechanism to have that landowner remove and replace that shrub. So we're going back and forth with the property owner, and it's difficult because staff time is increased and it's hard to work with. What ends up happening is that shrub will then start to contaminate the shrub on the right, which is across the road, and this process can eventually snowball through an entire neighborhood to the point where nothing's alive. So if we have a tree protection bylaw in place, it will help us work with landowners to kind of fix these reoccurring snowball issues. Okay, so what would a tree protection bylaw actually look like? My preliminary research to date suggests that these bylaws are fairly similar across the board. They look, the sections are kind of generic. But in any case, these are the main headings that you'll see. So there will be a definition section defining what is public land, what is private land, who does the town consider to be a qualified arborist who can examine a tree? There's general provisions, which is every bylaw. And then the third one here, which is arguably the most important, is there's a tree examination criteria in these bylaws. Pretty much what this is the town's horticulturalist would examine a tree for, let's say, the tree diameter or if there's diseases in the trees, and they would use this criteria to determine whether or not a tree is worth saving or not. And this is important when, applicants come in and they'd like to remove a tree or, whether, how much the value of that tree is worth to the community. Section 4, number 4 up there, it's important for us to discuss the relationship of this bylaw to the planning process. Like I said, we have development permits that we take and we show landscaping on, and it's important that we can relay to applicants that this bylaw actually applies to your development permits. Number 5, I've briefly touched on this, but it's important for us to establish a tree removal permit process so it's clear for everyone. When someone calls in, they're not getting different information. So it's just transparency for everyone. Number 6, it's important for us to establish bylaw violations. So if you drill into a tree, that's an infraction of $100 or whatever it may be. Number 7, the municipal enforcement process. So it might not make sense to automatically just go right to red here. There should be, if someone removes a tree or damages a tree without knowing that a bylaw was in place, there could be some sort of way to work with that landowner to, I guess, replace trees prior to giving them a fine. So it's just kind of working through the process. And then lastly, obviously, the compensation structure and the repayment plan. So if someone doesn't work with municipal enforcement, what are we going to do? Are we going to charge them $100, and then does that incrementally increase? Who will this bylaw affect? At this time, staff is proposing to apply this bylaw town-wide, and we're also proposing to apply this to public and private lands. And I think, this is slide 8 out of 10 here. We've had some support to establish a tree protection bylaw. So in the council agenda, there's the Communities in Bloom 2018 Strathmore evaluation. Among many things, that evaluation recommended that Strathmore adopt some sort of bylaw or heritage preservation plan to protect trees. And it also recommended that staff adopt an enforcement program. So this would go back to the compensation structure. So the bylaw actually can be implemented. And then also we looked at some adjacent municipalities in Alberta, and just really high level, the town of High River, town of Canmore, city of Calgary, city of Medicine Hat, city of Spruce Grove, and city of Brooks all have these plans in place. It seems like every municipality in BC has one that I couldn't find one that didn't have one. And Ontario, there seem to be a lot as well. So it's not just a foreign idea, like people are doing this. And just sort of bring this back full circle here, staff is here this evening to recommend to council that Development Services prepare a tree protection bylaw for September 2019. Thank you.
Thank you, Cameron. Councillor Peterson.
Your Worship, I'm prepared to move the recommendation. Oh, we can't, we have rise and report after?
So we can have that after then?
Should we wait till after or do now?
Or we can come out of committee of the whole?
Okay.
Okay,
So-
thank you.
So, Your Worship, instead of doing that, I certainly plan on doing that. I'm really grateful to see this in front of council for a variety of reasons. One of the things that I was wondering, I know that it's not specific to a bylaw, but Strathmore has some very, very unique processes around their heritage trees because of the CPR connection.
Okay.
So there's a huge story to tell in addition to this. So I don't know how that could be included somehow for the sake of posterity and all of this, but there are ties to our past, and there are culturally significant trees in terms of both in terms of the age of the trees and their species because of the work that was done by the CPR. And some of those trees still exist in town. So up until a few years ago, I had both an apricot tree and an apple tree that had been grafted onto peach tree, I think it was. So it was very, very interesting things that they did. And some of those, there are people in town who looked after them much better than I did. So they're still in the community, and people that have great knowledge around those incredible heritage trees, and of course, the heritage trees that exist on the Glenwood side that still have the plaques on them. And this, congratulations to Rob Peary and Communities in Bloom and Tom Sadler, and the significant amount of work that they've done. So I guess I would really like to see that. The other thing that I was wondering is if we could somehow have a heritage tree nomination process in there in the bylaw, because I know that once you put the bylaw forward, there will be people in the community that will have those trees that we don't know about that were part of that old CPR. And of course, when the development went in and Pine Road on the south side of the highway, lots of people snuck in the dark of night and dug up those trees and did crafting before the development went in. So, but it would be interesting to preserve that heritage, and I really appreciate what you've done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Councillor Sobel?
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. So thanks for this. I also support this bylaw, and it's interesting. I've seen pictures. I wasn't around when this occurred, but I've seen pictures of the countryside, especially south of here on Highway 1, which was absolutely. I mean, we lived in the middle of a forest, and the trees that we had around this community years and years ago it's remarkable. But let's get back to where we are now, and one of the reasons that I support this so much is as a result of complaints that I receive and frustration of homeowners who are living next door to owners who have trees with severe black rot in it. And this is as you well know, is a highly contagious tree disease, and I mean, I've lost a tree as a result of this. So it's something that I think is really needed. We need some mechanism to deal with this kind of stuff, and there is nothing right now. The only question I had was, you spoke a little bit about replacing trees and et cetera. Are you considering that to be a mandatory thing in regards to replacing trees or bushes? Is that something that you're looking at, or?
Through the chair, I must admit, at this time, we're not sure.
Okay.
I think
it's a tough one.
We've done some high-level research, and we have an idea of what it would look like, but I think it would take a bit more to understand what would actually work, So I think we'd have to leave that one for the research.
If I could make a recommendation that certainly for a developer or a builder who's forced to remove a number of trees to develop, that I think there should be some responsibility on that person to replace those trees.
Okay.
That's just an idea that I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. Deputy Mayor Montgomery.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks for the presentation, Cameron. Can you? So I read the High River bylaw, and I didn't see any mention in there about private property as far as like affecting other trees. And so, which communities, I guess, in Alberta have one that deals with private property?
Through the chair, as of right now, none have included private property. So Strathmore would be one of the first in Alberta to be doing that.
Okay.
I thought that question might come up tonight, so I looked at the legal precedent for private property tree preservation on Canley, and the legal world suggests that it is doable. We can do that. We just have to make that decision to use this on private property.
Okay, well, like I as far as like the trees on town land, I totally understand. Those are the town's trees. People should not be damaging or removing or affecting those trees. And as I guess as a believer in private property rights, if somebody has a diseased tree and it's threatening to disease my tree, that's a private property issue. Are we suggesting that if somebody has a tree on their property and they want to cut it down, we're going to say they can't cut it down or that they have to plant something else there?
Through the chair, I think we would, now this is all high level at this point, we haven't done enough research yet, but I anticipate requiring someone to replace or even not allowing the tree to be cut down if the tree has been deemed to be a heritage tree or it's, providing a culturally significant benefit to the community. However, that's still up in the air right now. We'd like to gauge council's appetite for the private application right now. So, this is good discussion.
Okay, yeah, personally, I've already probably cut down like 8 to 10 trees on my property this year. I cut down that many every year on my property. So the idea that somebody, first of all, I would have to apply to, manage the growth of my property. That really kind of rubs me the wrong way. But also it's creating kind of I believe, a bigger cost, either for myself to apply and then, pay whatever fees, or for the town to send somebody out to go look at every tree that somebody wants to cut down. So I would suggest, and I really hope that we don't go in that direction, that we should steer clear of trying to force people on, and even if when it comes to development, if somebody is, developing a property and, we want to have certain guidelines, that's different than somebody just trying to manage their own existing property. If somebody, wants to improve their view of, a sunset or something like that, that's totally their choice, I believe. If they want to diminish their property values by cutting down trees, that's totally their right as well, I believe. And I don't think that we could come along and say either hey, we think that you should plant this or this. Again, I think we should protect people's private property and protect people's private property from each other as well. But I don't think we should be dictating to people about what they can do on their private property if it's not affecting other people. Thank you.
Thank you, and that's a good point, Deputy Mayor Montgomery, because you might buy a property where the original owner planted a small tree, and you're buying that house 15 years later, and it's a massive tree that blocks the whole house from the road, and so you don't necessarily want that tree.
Or
So
there
that's a
could be
good point.
foundation problems too.
Yes, exactly. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Montgomery. Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good points, Councillor Montgomery. Thank you for your presentation, Cameron, and I appreciate that you're looking at High River as an example to bring in ours. There's a few things I didn't see in there, and a few things that I think we need to recognize that Strathmore is its own independent community, and we need to factor in the fact that we have a number of different places where local people, have taken the initiative to plant trees, shrubs, fruit-bearing trees on town property. And they have, over the years, got permission from the town in order to do that. I can think of 2 places, one in Parkwood, down by the canal, west of George Freeman Trail. There's a row of trees in there that were planted by the homeowners and are now being taken care of by the town. But people go out and prune them and stuff too. And then in my area, in Cambria, Cambridge Glen, we have a whole area that is completely taken care of by Claire Hagstrom. And I would like to see provisions in there for people like what Councillor Montgomery is trying to help to bring in, where people adopt a boulevard and adopt, an area. I would like to see that merged into this so that people are not being penalized for wanting to help, and so that people are able to work together with the town if they want to beautify their neighborhood. Because what we did as community members, everyone who backed onto that space contributed financially so that we were able to plant the trees, and we were given a choice, right? And so we were all kind of helping out. The other thing is I did look at the Heritage Tree Foundation website. There's quite a lot of information on there. They're the ones that kind of, I don't know, there's in Central Memorial Park in Calgary, I saw a number of different trees that were tagged, and they go right into that book, so that Alberta keeps track of all the heritage trees, and we could definitely include some of that history from the CPR and protect some of those trees which
We even have some apricot trees downtown, which are almost in a parking lot. They're like down an alley and they're just sitting there, and we don't really know about them. If they were tagged, they would be protected. And, you know, that would help out so much. Then I also had an interesting thing happen to me yesterday. I had a lot of winter kill in my backyard, and I had to purchase some some chemicals to kill the roots of my tree. And I had to produce ID in order to do that, because these are serious chemicals, and I didn't know I could do that. But I would like to see things in place, though, that I know this is going to go against what you say, but there has to be a responsibility factor that if I put something out that could injure animals, that I let people know, or I sign it, or I cover it or something. Because if I leave that out, and the birds, the insects, and the little dogs and cats that, you know, might be in the neighborhood get a whiff of that, they could die. So I would like to see some type of, you know, that kind of thing. And then, does this include commercial and residential space?
Through the chair, yes. We would likely include the whole town on this.
Good.
So industrial
Thank you.
as well.
Awesome. I look forward to reading this bylaw when it comes out in September. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brower. Councillor Peterson.
I just wanted to mention that the social, ecological, economic development studies at UBC, their sustainability program, they're called SEEDS, UBC SEEDS Sustainability Program. They've done, I know, some work on legislation recently. And the other thing too is that the Western District Historic Society has, I think, just recently met with the owner of the On the Spot app about including the heritage trees that are connected to the CPR on their walking tour app as well. So I know that that's not in the purview of the bylaw, but I really appreciate that you brought this forward, and I really appreciate the work and thought that's gone into it. And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. No other questions from councillors? Thank you very much for your presentation, and then when we come out of Committee of the Whole, we can make that motion. Thank you very much, Cameron. And that brings us to urgent business, 7.1, Wheatland Housing Authority. We'll go to Deputy Mayor Montgomery.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Jen?
Shut the mic. Your Worship, we need to come out of Committee of the Whole as we need to vote on.
You're stepping on my motion. I would like to move that we come out of Committee of the Whole.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Montgomery. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? Councillor Peterson?
No.
Oh, I thought you were going to make your motion.
Nope, Jen.
Deputy Mayor Montgomery.
I will make the motion. Yeah, sure. No problem.
Looks like it's me this time.
Okay.
You probably can't make the motion for you to say.
No, why would you make a motion for yourself?
No, I was going to say I want to extend the movie to movie. Yeah, let's extend the movie.
I wish it was a movie.
Let's extend the meeting till 10:30.
We have a motion on the floor to extend the meeting to potentially 10:30. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? Motion is carried. Councillor Peterson.
Your Worship, I would like to move that Councillor Jason Montgomery be appointed by council as a alternative representative to the Wheatland Housing Management Body, replacing temporarily Councillor Terry Cox. And if I may speak to the motion, Your Worship.
Certainly. Thank you.
The conditions under which the Wheatland Housing Management Body operates make sure that no one can come to that table as a voting member unless they are authorized to do so by their council. And so Councillor Cox, for medical reasons, has stepped down for a short time, and it is with her full knowledge and encouragement that we make this motion, and I'm very grateful that Councillor Montgomery, Deputy Mayor Montgomery, has stepped forward to take this on, and I'm appreciative. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you to Deputy Mayor Montgomery for being willing to step forward and volunteer yourself for that. So there's a motion on the floor. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? The motion is carried. Councillor Peterson.
Your Worship, I would move that Council direct Development Services to prepare a tree protection bylaw for September 2019.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. You've all heard that motion. All in favor? And the motion is carried. And now I believe we go to urgent business and 7.1 Wheatland Housing Authority. We just did that. I thought you were going to speak on that as well, but no. Okay. Thank you very much. So, Councillor Bauer.
I move to adjourn. Why? First? Yeah. Oh, jeez. I move to go into camera.
Before we do that, Your Worship, may I just put forward a kind of
An urgenter?
No, it's okay. I think it'll wait, but
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Oh, okay.
It was an inquiry that I sent in. Huh?
Yes, Your Worship. I was just about to interrupt council once again. Your Worship, I have a number of admin inquiries.
Okay,
for this
thank you.
evening.
I didn't see them on here. Is that typical?
Your Worship, it is, however, they're coming forward this evening.
Okay, thank you, Jen. So you want to take care of that now then?
Yes. So I have a number. So the first one is from Councillor Sobel in regards to the parking at Kinsman Lake parking lot. It reads, given that Kinsman Lake officially closes at 11 p.m., I question why parking is allowed in the parking lot after that hour. This parking lot has been the subject of numerous complaints regarding noise and littering, and it is hoped that the enforcement of a no parking bylaw after 11 p.m. might assist with these issues. Second is from Councillor Sobel in regard to council committee letters of appreciation. The success of our council committees really does rely on members of the public being willing to donate their free time to be active participants. I cannot overemphasize how much I appreciate the presence and direction provided on a regular basis throughout the year. On occasion, circumstances require them to step down from these committees, and for months I have raised the hope that a certificate or letter of thanks can be presented to them at that time, signed by the mayor on behalf of council. Third is in regard to New Pathway, Centennial Boulevard. It reads, the hard work done by Communities in Bloom and their new Birth Force location is impressive. And also expanding on a regular basis. The location for this is on the north side of Centennial Way between Thomas Drive and Center Street. Regrettably, there is no pathway located on that side of the road. My question to administration pertains to the cost of installing a shale pathway along that stretch of road, allowing better access during the summer months. There is no suggestion that this need by paved, as there is a cement pathway on the south side which can be used during the winter months. Fourth is from Councillor Sobel in regard to dandelions. Constituents continue to be concerned about the lack of chemical spraying in our parks and green spaces in an effort to eradicate dandelions. I am aware that this is a complex issue and that there are, in fact, safer methods in dealing with dandelion control, especially for private yards. My question is whether administration, with the assistance of our horticulturalist, can produce a document that deals with present legislature dealing with chemical spraying, and perhaps more importantly, why this legislature was made law. I also question whether our communications department can assist in providing this municipality's position on dandelion spraying to our public. Fifth is from Councillor Sobel in regard to the Welcome to Strathmore signage. While acknowledging that there is a provincial transportation issue with erecting a second sign next to our present Welcome to Strathmore signs, I am wondering whether there continues to be a plan to include two important pieces of information, in brackets year of establishment and population of Strathmore, as an attachment to those signs. Sixth is from Councillor Sobel in regard to highway signage. With the downtown. With the amazing work that has been done to our downtown area, I continue to be concerned about the lack of highway signage, informing the traveling public about not only this newly renovated area, but also about Kinsman Lake, also in the downtown area. There has been much discussion about efforts to take advantage of tourism dollars, but unless people know that these areas exist, success seems questionable. My question to administration is whether there is a plan to erect signage on Highway 1 in this regard, and if so, when can we expect this to be done? And the final admin inquiry is from Councillor Peterson. And it reads, would it be possible for the town of Strathmore to have an unmanned booth at the Strathmore Stampede trade show? This would allow for advertisement of upcoming events, garner support for future endeavors, and at her input from community, and I believe it's hear input from the community. If councillors were of a mind, they could, from time to time, man the table and interact with the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Councillor Bauer?
I'm not saying anything.
You're not going to say anything? Councillor Corbeil?
I move we go in camera.
All right, we have a motion to go in camera at 9:35. All in favor? And we're going in camera at 9:35. Thank you very much to all the public at home watching.